and we are ready to introduce Patrick, our spiritual psychologist. Make some noise, please.
Enjoy, Bella.
Hello. Oh, it's on. Yeah. Good day, everyone. Thanks for coming today. So that was a great intro. I don't even think I could talk myself up that much, but I'll try to talk myself up a little bit. So I am a psychologist. That's part of the things that I do. I'm also a spiritual teacher, an energy healer, and author as well. And most of my teachings focus on understanding what the true self is. And so the true self is our inner essence. And we want to understand that the more we can connect to our inner essence, the more peace we can have in our lives and more well-being. So throughout this talk, I'm kind of going to want to pose a question to you, and you don't have to know the answer now. But the question is do you really know who you are? So before I became a psychologist, I was always had an inquisitive mind. And I think I was about 19, 20, and I used to ask myself, like, who am I? I used to ask the question all the time. I was always different people, or I always behaved differently in different settings. So when I was around my friends, I was quite laughy and gregarious. When I was around strangers, I was quite sort of shy and quiet. Around family, I was more chilled and relaxed. And I really racked my brain so many times to say, well, which one's the real me? Because I didn't really feel like I was being fake. I didn't feel like I was doing something that wasn't aligned with me, but I just realized that I had so many elements of me. And what I finally realized was that the true self is a part of us that actually transcends our personality traits. It transcends our behaviors. And so what I was trying to define as myself, I was never going to find it because that's too dynamic. But when we understand who we truly are, then that's when we can actually really live and be free and engage in all the behaviors that we have within us in the most aligned way possible. So my journey into spirituality, though, I wasn't always a spiritual person. While I was raised Catholic, and yes, I think Daniela said my background is Italian, I was always someone with a very logical mind. So my mind was really about, like, if I could see it, touch it, taste it, then it was real. Otherwise, it wasn't real. And that was until I started doing Kung Fu. So I started Kung Fu when I think I was about 22, I think I was. And when I started Kung Fu, I was introduced to the world of Qi energy. And Qi energy is life force energy. And so we understood life force energy from a place of Qi itself, learning Tai Chi, learning about auras, chakras. So I really got deeply involved in the energetic world. And the more I did that, the more I the logic started to sort of disappear a little bit, not completely, but a little bit, and allowed sort of the non-physical into my life. And not soon after that, I was working as a psychologist, and I was working with another co-worker, and she was a devout Buddhist, and she spoke about something called enlightenment. And enlightenment was just something I'd vaguely heard about, like I'd watched like the Kung Fu movies, or seen people just talk about transcendental stuff. And what I really heard in my head was that enlightenment is when we can transcend our conditioned mind. And in my mind, there was something really deep within that said, well, I really hate the idea that I'm actually being controlled by my conditioned mind. I hate the idea I'm not being my true self, that my conditioning is ruling me. So I sort of went out and I said, I've got to meditate, and I've got to meditate as much as I can, and I've got to find enlightenment. I've got to chase it. So I was reading books about it, and I was meditating every day. I made a promise to myself I'd meditate daily. And eventually I found a book, and I was in Italy on a train from Rome to Milan, and I was reading this book, and the book was saying that you're not your mind, you're not your emotions, you're not your body, you're the awareness of those things. And I had heard that prior, I'd heard that before, but at that moment, it's like I could see my whole life in a different way. And I woke up to just being a consciousness, being in a conscious awareness. And that awareness is a place where we're noticing the things happening around us, but we're not necessarily engaged in those things. So I was noticing that I was in awe. I wasn't the one in awe. It was kind of like I was an avatar within my body, or my body was the avatar and I was the consciousness within it. And so I felt like I had woken up. I felt like I finally found who I truly was. And while that was fine, I still found that I was quite logical. And I started living a bit of a robotic life then. I started saying, well, if nothing's important, if nothing really affects me, then what's the use of doing anything? So I kind of, stopped doing things for fun. I stopped listening to music. I just sort of thought, well, that's what a spiritual person would do. A spiritual person just has peace no matter what. Don't worry about any emotion. Just cast them aside. They're not important. So eventually living life like that after a few years actually started to make me feel quite disconnected and depleted from myself. So I started sort of going through a little bit of turmoil. And that's when my emotional journey started then. So I sort of got to a place where I just cracked emotionally. And the next phase of my journey was actually about understanding the emotional part of me. So it wasn't just about doing it from logic and waking up from here, but it was actually knowing how to wake up from a deeper level of embracing all of our being. So I had to really redefine what it meant to be spiritual then, because for me, spiritual meant being just in the high zone, so being appreciative all the time, being loving all the time, being accepting all the time, rather than spirituality means encompassing all of that part of us. And so our true self encompasses all of it. So it's not just the highs, it encompasses the low, it encompasses the nitty-gritty within us, or our shadow selves. So today I want to talk a little bit about how we get disconnected from that, but also how to come back to that and how to understand ourselves from an emotional place as an entry point into our true self. So when we're born, we're actually born as our true self. We're born as our true self within our body. And so we're born as spirit within a body. And as that body grows, it gets named something. So, me obviously named Patrick. So I get called Patrick, and all throughout my life I get called Patrick, but the body that got called Patrick is not the same body. So what got named as Patrick actually is always evolving. It's not constant. But there's something within me that always is constant. And that's really is our true self, or our awareness. After our body, we usually start to identify with our thoughts. So people tell us who we are. We say, you're a good person, you're a bad person, you're a nice person, and then our roles come into that as well. So we get told, you're a psychologist, you're a hairdresser, whatever it may be. And we then start to identify with our thoughts as ourselves, and that's what we call our conditioning, so our conditioned mind. So our conditioned mind is then where we start to look for all the answers, and we start to think that we are what we think we are. And the more we think that, the more disconnected we become from ourselves. And that part of ourselves is called what I call the conditioned egoic mind. When we're born, I call that part of ourselves the raw part of ourselves, the raw self. So we're born with our innate personality, our intuition, our instincts, but we're not necessarily born with all these thinking patterns yet. So when we get lost in these thinking patterns of either the raw self or the conditioned mind, that's going to keep us more disconnected from our true self. Because our true self is always there beneath that. Our thoughts always change. I once believed in Santa Claus, but obviously Santa Claus isn't real, but it took me time to learn that. So while I believed that really seriously before, it changed and evolved. And that's the same thing if I believe I'm not good enough. So not good enough is a bit harder to dispute than maybe necessarily something like Santa Claus. But just because I believe I'm not good enough, that's not necessarily how our true self sees things. That's been conditioned into us. It's been programmed. So our conditioned mind, while it can be useful, it's actually not always so useful for us from a place of connecting back to our true self. But what it can do with our mind is our mind can help us understand how to solve problems, can help us understand how to plan, how to prepare, how to possibly prevent danger. It can help us understand how to negotiate people and recognize patterns in situations. So our conditioned mind isn't all bad, or our ego isn't all bad. But when we just become a slave to our ego and let it run our journey, then that's when it usually becomes a problem, because it means we're more disconnected from our true self then. So that happens really when we overuse it. So any time that you find that you're stuck in suffering, there's a really high chance that you're disconnected from your true self and you're actually lost in your egoic mind. You're lost in your thinking patterns. So in order to go a bit deeper into the true self, we really want to understand, well, what is the true self? So I know I'm talking about it like it's a thing, but that's the best words we have. We only do have things to talk about. But the true self is more like an energetic consciousness. So it's actually not a tangible thing. It's an energetic part of us. So some people call that Buddha nature. Some people call that Christ consciousness, our higher self. I call it the true self. But really what it is, they're all talking about the same thing. And if we talk about it more from an energetic consciousness, it's an energetic consciousness with intelligence. So in a sense, the true self is picking up on energies from the universe, that's our connection to the universe, and it's actually trying to draw us along its path. So I think of it like it's trying to draw us along a path of a flow of a river. And that river is leading us to our state of most peace. And the more we know how to follow that state, the more peace we actually go to. Doesn't mean we don't have any pain at all, but it just means we have the most peaceful journey down that river. So really our job is to try to learn to listen to that, and we can listen to that at any given moment. In terms of the true self, it's always there in this present moment. It's always engaged in the here and now. It's not something that's in the future. It's something that's always where we are. We can't be at distance or away from it. And the true self, the best word I've got to describe it is what I say is love. So it's loving of ourselves, it's loving of the world, it's loving of others, and it has no discrimination against anyone else. It doesn't mean that it won't actually get us to change certain things and just tolerate being treated poorly. So that's kind of what I did initially from waking up. It's like nothing matters, just tolerate anything. But what it does know is it has an innate intelligence about knowing how to set a limit in the most loving and compassionate way. So it is very accepting, and it's not something that we have to. It's not something that fights against the world. So often what we're told is we say just surrender or just accept what is. The only thing not surrendering or not accepting what is really our conditioned mind. Our true self is always accepting of the current scenario, whatever it is, and it might still try to change it from a place of acceptance, but it is always accepting. It is always peaceful in the process of change, not necessarily in turmoil or resistance in the process of change. So what we want to do is understand that we can awaken to this part of ourselves at any moment. So me, I was always chasing the awakening and always looking for it. But what we can see is that our true self is there right now. And some of us will awaken to it instantaneously. So there's been an ancient Indian master, he sort of contemplated death. I think he was 8, he contemplated death, laid down on the ground, and he woke up instantaneously. And that might happen to some of us. It's more likely what's going to happen is that the true self will be more of an unfolding. So we'll connect deeper and deeper to it and awaken more and more to its existence each time, or as time goes by. So trying to chase it too much actually is what keeps it away, because we're trying to chase something that's already here. We're just reconnecting back to ourselves. And the way we can actually do that is by learning how it communicates to us. So we don't have to wait to chase it. We can say, well, how am I feeling it? How am I hearing its wisdom right now? How am I feeling that flow of its river? And it usually communicates to us through intuition, through instinct. It can communicate to us through our emotions and also our intuitive thoughts, like I mentioned, intuition, but just thoughts in themselves. And part of our job is kind of knowing how to differentiate the communication coming from our true self and also differentiate the communication coming from our conditioned self or our raw self. So our emotions are the best entry point for that. So when I'm feeling bad, it's a pretty high chance that I'm disconnected or pinched off from my true self. I can never be fully disconnected. It's only just more pinched off or less pinched off. So it's a little bit like if a hose is kinked rather than it's not snapped off, it's just either kinked, so less water is flowing through. So there's less connection of my higher being coming through to me. So to understand how to do that, we want to really understand what causes emotions though, because we really need to differentiate between emotions caused by the true self and emotions caused by the egoic mind or the raw self. So for the raw self, so as an example, some emotions caused by the raw self might be, from a genetic perspective, is loneliness. So loneliness is designed as for humans to help make us connect to each other, to help build societies, to help build relationships. So deep within us all, we have a sense of loneliness when we're on our own. It's just going to be there. And we might be able to handle it, manage it very well, but it will be there. There's no transcending loneliness from a raw self perspective. So sometimes our raw self is just feeling lonely because we don't have anyone there. And that's okay. That's not necessarily bad. And it's just about saying, well, is this loneliness is making us prone to connecting? And our job is to say, do I feel the need to connect right now? It might not be. The true self might say no. And in that case, it's more about how do I connect more deeply to myself? So using loneliness as the example a bit more is that loneliness can also come from conditioning as well. It might be like you're not good enough if you're alone. You need to be in a relationship to be happy. Or you need to have society and have people around you just to be okay. So if I'm feeling alone for those reasons, because I have these beliefs, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. So in that case, I might desperately be seeking to find other people just because of my conditioning is making me feel so bad that I have to go search for someone. So in that sense, the ego is controlling our action, not necessarily our true self. So what we really want to do in those situations is really see, well, what is my true self saying about this situation? And is my true self actually giving me the advice to go connect, or is my true self saying, you know what, it's actually okay to be where I am right now? Because our true self is okay with where we are right now, and it's okay with every emotion as well. So When I woke up to myself, that's the name of my book actually, that's why I called it that, and also because my parents always told me to wake up to myself. They didn't really care to hear about it when I finally did, but but they did read the book. But when I woke up to myself, I was very detached from my emotions, like I mentioned. So, and the more emotions came, I actually started hating them more and more. So I was really stuck in hatred of my emotions. And me hating my emotions, eventually I found out, was actually me hating being human. Because our emotions are part of being human. And our job is to understand them, to learn how to live with them and learn how they help us and can guide us at any given moment to live our truth. So me having to come back into my emotion was my journey, which is where I feel like why I can talk about it a bit more, because I was someone who was generally never very emotional, but I had to learn what I'm talking to you about. It never came naturally for me. So when it comes to our emotions, we really want to recognize that we don't want to try to control them necessarily. We want to just be able to allow them to be there. We want to recognize if I can let the emotion be just as it is, then I've actually got some wisdom to take it. So I call it like taking a backward step. So I feel the emotion. Let's just say go back to lonely. I feel lonely. Lonely is trying to prompt me to have connection. So can I feel lonely and can I allow lonely? Can I allow that feeling in my body to be there? Can I be okay and have peace with its existence rather than having to chase it away? In that little step there, that's where we have access to our true self. That's where we actually step out of the conditioning. That's where we step out of the conditioned mind. We step into a place of wisdom to know whether to follow this and to connect to our calling of the true self rather than our egoic mind. And the more we do this, we just get better and better at being able to do that. It's not really like magic generally. Like I said, it can happen instantaneously, but for me, it was like doing it again and again and again and again and again. And the way I did it was really recognizing my patterns. So really understanding how my conditioned egoic mind worked and understanding what emotions it was actually trying to save or protect me from or remove from me was really the way that I got to understand is, where's my true self here? If I'm not in peace right now, and if I'm not in peace even about the emotion right now, then I am not connected to my true self. It's not actually going to serve me to be like that. So really what we want to do from there is, when we are connected to our true self, what we can say is that the problem here is my thinking. So my mind is thinking something that's too far away from what my true self is believing. So I'll just keep using lonely because I think I've whipped it hard enough, so keep going with that one. So let's just say I was feeling lonely, and my conditioned mind says that it's really bad to be alone. You're going to be alone forever, and no one's ever going to love you. And then I know that my true self is saying that it's perfectly fine to be alone. What a great opportunity to get to know yourself. So we've got a disparity there. So my egoic mind is going to say, well, no, that's not bloody true. This is what's true. It's going to have this battle between the ego and what the true self is saying. And when we do that, we actually disconnect ourselves more from the true self, and then we actually end up being more controlled by our conditioning. So part of our job at times is to recognize when my thinking pattern is different from my true self, but also how do I bridge my thinking pattern back up to my true self? So me trying to say it's perfectly fine to be on my own, that was too far from where I could reach. So I think of it like if I shine the light on, it usually happens in hotel rooms for me, but when you're in a hotel room and someone opens the blinds and you sort of go like a vampire, that's what happens when we try to when we turn our thoughts on too brightly. So what we want to do is have a little bit of a dimmer switch, and a dimmer switch to push our thoughts higher and higher at any given moment, or as high as we can at any given moment, to as close as it can to the true self. So an example might be that, it's okay for some people to be on their own. Maybe being on your own is a good opportunity to get to know yourself. It's useful to get to know yourself. Everyone's on their own really, like no one is exactly with someone all the time. Everyone's living their own life. So our job is to find beliefs we already do believe that help me feel better and move in a more peaceful direction to connect me back to my truth. And when we find that, if we go back to that hose analogy, is that there actually gets allowed more water through that hose. So we get more flow back to our true self when we do that. So really being aware of our emotions is the first step, because our emotions really tell us what we think. And generally, the worse we feel, the more likely we are to be disconnected from our truth. And the better we feel, the more likely we're connected to our truth. There can be some times where that's not actually accurate. So even then we can kind of say, well, if I can't really feel better, can I be at peace at feeling bad? Or can I be at peace at feeling unpleasant? So even in that peace of feeling unpleasant, we are still connected to our truth. So we're experiencing the emotion from a true self perspective. It might mean you need to use it, it might mean you don't need to use it. But it isn't about denying our emotions. It's really about being whole and bringing everything into your being and everything into your life, not just the good emotions or the pleasant emotions. So when we have that awareness, we really don't have to get so much controlled by our conditioning. Our conditioning is really designed to keep us safe and designed to keep us in a familiar setting. And safe not just physically, but emotionally safe. So our conditioning isn't dynamic enough for us to navigate the world. It doesn't really do a good job of that at all. Or not at all, that's terrible. We'd all be dead if it didn't do a good job at all. It doesn't do a flexible enough job to give us a life of peace. It doesn't really care about peace. It only cares about survival and only cares about feeling in a familiar state. That's all it really cares about. So your minds aren't always going to have your best interests at heart. It's not going to always have your true self's interests at heart. So the real reason we want to listen to our true self really is we do want peace and we do want, well, I don't want to talk on your behalf, but I know I wanted peace and well-being. I wanted to live my true state for peace and well-being. I thought peace and well-being was about avoidance of the emotions, but it was actually peace and well-being with the emotions and utilizing them as the opportunity to realign back to my true self. Because when we do that, we do have our connection to all that is, and we also have our connection to the universal God. It's actually a clearer connection. So what's important from that then is to understand how do we listen to our true self. So like I said, we can listen at any given moment, and the true self talks to us through, like I said, intuition. It talks to us through our instincts, through our thoughts, our feelings, but it also talks to us in other strange ways. So I have dreams of things that I'm receiving messages from it. I hear songs, so I often hear songs, and it's like, oh, that's exactly the message in that song that I wanted to hear. And songs, I hear them in my head, not even hearing them literally, but songs I haven't heard since the 80s or something like that. And I was like, I didn't even know those lyrics. So the true self will actually call our attention as much as possible, and it will call it in all different ways. We just have to know how to listen to it. So when you do feel like you're having some connection, a really important thing is, because it is intuitive, is to really ask, does this feel true to me right now? So the true self isn't about doing what feels necessarily good. It can be, but it's usually about what feels true. So for me, just as a general habit from my conditioning, it doesn't really feel good standing in front of people possibly being judged. That doesn't feel good to me. But from a true self perspective, it's like, well, so what? That's no big deal. And for me, I'm really trained now at following my true self, and it just feels more satisfying to me. Not necessarily always good, but more satisfying. And it feels true for me to be doing this. So it's really understanding what feels true to you, or what feels right for you, not what feels right, but also understanding what doesn't feel right for you. And we can learn that as we go. Like, we don't have to have those answers all the time. We can sometimes learn what feels right by doing something that felt wrong and recognizing, oh, I really knew I should have done that, but I did this instead. Let me see next time what I do differently. And you can practice that anyway. You can practice that when you're in traffic, when you're driving, sorry. So that's how I first started trying to practice it. I was like, well, which way do I feel like is the right way to go today for me? Or I can do that. You can do that with food. You can do that really with any decision. When you're taking that backward step in the true self, when you kind of, now I'm taking a backward step, but when you're taking that backward step within, it's really about a time to kind of say, all right, what feels true to me here? What action do I feel like I want to do or feels best to me in this situation? You don't have to be fully self-realized to connect to it. The connection is there at any given moment. Another way you can do it is by asking yes or no questions. So often I was like, what should I do? What should I do? I was sort of talking to my true self a bit more like that and trying to hear that consciousness, but it was too vague. But if I said, does it feel right for me to do this? It's a yes or no question is going to make it easier. Does this person feel good to me? The true self, though, what it will do, it's not when you receive the answers, they won't always feel like they're logical, though. You know, sometimes it might feel like, well, why would I say that? I wouldn't want to do that. Or it feels like, it feels right for me right now to go put peanut butter on I was going to say a banana, but lots of people do that, but I don't do that. So for me, that would be really weird. So really it would seem illogical for me to do that, but right at that moment, that's what it was calling for. And maybe I had to go to the shops and buy a banana and see a friend. So our true self has sort of more awareness about our life and how it's moving than we do, or our mind. My mind really loves to prepare, really loves to do that. And so even preparing some of this, and obviously I've got some paper here, but my mind was like, you have to rehearse it and rehearse it, rehearse it, and do it. But my true self just wouldn't allow it. So the only time I tried, I couldn't focus, couldn't think, couldn't even read it. And so it was more about, and I did it a couple of times, so it wasn't like I did none, but it was really about just finding the time when it felt easy, and that's really when we know when we're connected to our true self, when it comes from a place of ease, when it comes from a place of inspired action or aligned action. Because that's the action we're after, the action aligned with the true self. So the way to know that is, like I said, when it is inspired or aligned. And sometimes it does require bravery to do that though. So bravery and generally self-trust. So I know me, I felt like, oh, this feels like the right thing to do, but what do you think about it? And we like the assurance. We like to say, well, they know how to live my life, I'm sure of it. But obviously no one can do that for us. So while it's useful to maybe get some opinions, and if you are going to get opinions, I generally suggest you get opinions from happy people. Because happy people are going to be the ones most likely going to help you guide you back to your truth. So, but at the end of the day, no matter what opinion you get, no one can tell you how to live your truth. Your truth is yours, so you have to find that within. So, other ways I'd suggest really to connect to your true self would also be meditation. Mindfulness meditation is what I started with when I started meditating, but then I went further into something called meditative self-inquiry. And what that was about was really just sitting in stillness. And whenever my mind mentioned I, so I'm tired or I want to go there later, I would really ask the question, well, who's this I? Which part of me is the I this is talking about? Is it like my body's going to go there later? But if I'm not my body, then who's this I that my mind's saying or speaking about? And what part of me is aware that my mind is saying this? What part of me is aware of my mind or aware of my body? So meditative self-inquiry is a really good way to connect to that part of it. Something else you can do to connect to your true self is what I call the true self breath. And this one I'm going to do with you. So if you're okay with that, it's best done with your eyes closed, but you don't have to do that. But if you do feel comfortable to close your eyes, otherwise just leave them open. And as you close your eyes, I just want you to set the intention internally that you wish to connect more deeply to your true self. That you wish to get to know it more intimately and get to know that part of you more deeply and live from that part of you. And I'd like you to scan through your body. And within your body, I'd like you to see if you can notice where you feel the core of your being is. There is no right or wrong for this one either. So everyone's different. I'll just give you some ideas. So some people feel the core of their being is in the middle of their head. Some people feel it at their heart. Some people feel it deep in their gut. Just wherever you feel it is for you. And at that area, I'd like you to imagine a ball of golden light, roughly the size of a golf ball. And just imagine it glowing gently. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to breathe in and imagine breathing in golden light and that golden light filling that golf ball size light. And as you breathe out, imagine the air exhaling out that part of your body. So extending out. And breathing in that golden light again, down into that core. And then breathing out again. And just doing that one more time, breathing in the golden light, down into your core, and then breathing out again. And you've now just facilitated and created a deeper connection to your true self. The feeling might be quite subtle. And the more you're aware of that subtlety, the more you're aware of when you're more aligned with your true self and when you're less aligned with your true self. So at any given moment, you can actually take that breath. I call that the true self breath. It's something that you can do at any given moment when you, particularly if you're feeling a little rattled, you don't have to wait till then, and you can do that as many breaths as you need. But it is an intention to connect to that energetic essence of you. So that energetic essence of you can help dictate your, not dictate's a little bit too strong, motivate how you move through your journey in a more peaceful way. Not necessarily the way that our mind wants to do it, which is just about feeling good and feeling familiar. So really you can do that, like I said, at any given moment. And it's, as subtle as it is really, really quite useful. I use it myself still all the time. So overall, the true self is something that exists, even though it's not something that we can actually touch. And I'm probably not having to preach to people who aren't aware of that. But it is our energetic essence. And it is possible to wake up to that at any given moment. It's possible to move towards awakening to that, but it's also possible to connect to that right here, right now. You don't have to actually move any further than where you are. In fact, if you're chasing it, you're actually further away from it because you're just chasing something that's right here. It's kind of like me chasing or trying to look at my own eyeballs, like it's there. I don't need to try to look at it, it's there. So the more we do live by that part of us, while initially we will actually often feel a little bit worse as we start that process generally, because the more we live our truth, the more the old emotions that we've got stored in our body actually start to release. But knowing how to connect to our truth while they release means that the suffering's not going to be so much. It will just be more of, yes, it feels painful, but I can let that baggage go as I move deeper and deeper to my truth and deeper to my well-being. And the more you practice it, the more you can get better at listening to it and aligning to it so that really you can live the life of your soul. And the life of your soul really is that peaceful existence here on earth, because our soul is our bridge to heaven and earth, and we're here to live heaven on earth. So it's available. I thought I'd never attain it. It came, and then it's an ongoing thing. It's not just about I've got it and that's it. It's about how do I keep doing that and how do I keep choosing peace as my option and not letting the ego dictate the journey. So thanks for listening today. I think I've gone through the time. Thank you very much. I think we've got some time for questions if anyone has any questions. No pressure for questions. Yes, sir. Sorry, she's going to bring the mic because I can't hear you. Sorry.
So clearing that emotion, what if it's mainly anger and you don't want to sit with that, but you want to get through it? Like, how do you feel safe with that, knowing that it's not going to just stay?
Yeah, so with anger in particular, so there's a time and a place where you feel like it's like having a really good vent and a really good angry vent. So often with anger, for me in particular, one of the things I did initially when I was really angry was I wanted to break something. And then I was angry that I had to clean up what I was going to break. So I felt trapped. And then my mind was really good then actually. It actually said, well, what if you get the ice from the freezer and go break it on the wall outside? So what I did is I found a way to release the anger in a way that wasn't damaging. But what we want to recognize is once we get to a place where it's sort of released, if we keep going in that thinking pattern, it actually builds it up again. Underneath anger, though, anger is usually most of the time a resistance or secondary emotion. And so what that means is underneath anger, for me at that time, it was actually a lot of sadness. I was only angry because I was sad. So once I've released the anger, then it was about how do I sit with sadness better? How do I purge that from and not even purge it, how do I just allow it to be there? How do I not try to control it? And we think that, and I know me especially, I used to think that control was all about doing it physically, doing something physically. But a lot of my control was actually within my mind. And so saying, no, it's okay, or just let it be, or just accept it. So a lot of control was with how I spoke to myself. So really to have a release, I sort of have it, I always say, have a good tantrum. That's usually what I say. But then recognize underneath the tantrum is usually a pain of some sort. And then it's processing that emotion. Yeah. Thank you. And behind you, I think.
Thank you. My question is about when you were talking about ego and then I guess the other aspect of who you truly are.
Yep.
So when you go through the journey of healing and, or self-awareness, and then I guess it would lead to some sort of healing journey, do you find that that integrating that, the difference between who you think you are and what you've conditioned to be, do you find that leads into, I'm happy to be this person. I have all of these challenges and I'm accepting of that? Or do you find that, oh, well, it springboards this whole thing of, oh, this is who I thought I was, and now I've got to go through this awareness and acceptance, and then I guess it's the healing starts. But for some of us, it takes many, many years, and and I've also heard that healing is best. You go head on. If you go head on and walk through it, then you can save yourself a lot of pain by facing it. If it's loneliness or rejection, so what are your thoughts on that?
So in terms of that part, facing it head on, I think just face it to the level you feel comfortable facing it with. I'm not about traumatizing myself to do that. It's not necessarily about having to do it the hardest way possible, because what's the point of doing it the hardest way possible? I'm usually about trying to do it the most peaceful way possible. In terms of, I think you said about when you become more aware that you might actually not know who you are more anymore. Generally what happens with our mind is we'll either notice all the ways our mind learnt to try to help us, and because that's all, our mind is only ever trying to help us. It's actually never being bad to us. Our ego isn't trying to be bad. It's just trying to help in a way that it learnt to help. So what usually happens with that is that we either find things that just don't serve me anymore, and so we usually work on letting them go. The other thing is that the ego isn't that it's bad, it's just usually imbalanced. So it might be really good at pushing me to put in effort. We don't want to lose that. But we also want to have an ego or have a thinking pattern that allows us to rest. So it brings those two things in unity. So it's not about never worrying what other people think, because it could be useful to worry a little bit what other people think. It could be safe to worry what other people think. But if I'm only worrying what other people think, then that's a problem. So a lot of the time it's actually about balancing those aspects. So if you're really strong on one, it's not often about eliminating. It's actually just about knowing how to bring the other side in, because that is the balance. Yeah, thank you.
I have another question, actually. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Go with the microphone. Yeah.
He's got control of the mic.
Yeah. Can you process an emotion fully if you don't understand exactly where it comes from?
Yes, you can feel the emotion fully. A lot of the times, a lot of the emotions we feel, even though we might feel it very strongly right now, it's actually from the history of emotions that we're feeling. So we don't have to know, well, this happened when I was 4 years old and that's why I feel this way. It just might be, I know that I feel really sad right now and I don't have to necessarily know where it's from, but usually I always say, do I know where it's from? I always ask that first. And if I don't know where it's from, I just say, well, obviously there's emotion that needs to be processed that's in there, otherwise I wouldn't be feeling it, and I'm just okay to let it out. So just okay to feel it. And feeling it's one thing, so we let ourselves feel it. Then we also want to recognize, all right, I don't have to just stay in that. I can, like I said, back to your question up there, is that we can kind of say, yes, I'm going to feel it, but I'm also going to give it maybe 10 minutes, and I can do 10 minutes each day and do something nice for myself rather than just sit in my pain and misery all the time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, at a time, I usually say my favorite place really to do it was in the shower. So I'd cry in the shower, whatever it was. The shower was the best time. Like the shower's got on and off. The tears washed away completely. So I really call that grief time in the shower. So, yeah. But you want to find your own unique way. Like there's no right or wrong. Or there's some ways, maybe not wrong, but less healthy ways might be a better wording for it. But ways that make the journey quicker and ways that make the journey longer. And really, I know I took the longest, maybe not the longest, it's the shortest journey I could take with what I knew. But it's from my journey, that's how I teach. I teach the shortcuts to people because of that. And that's why I wrote my book about it, for that exact same reason. So people don't have to struggle as long as I did with it and have to understand every little detail of it to navigate through it. Yeah. Any other questions? Sorry, what does it affect you yet?
Thank you so much. The Chinese have a beautiful saying. They say, tension is who you think you are. Mm-hmm. Relaxation is who you are.
Yeah, that's right. There's someone just at the back, yeah. So usually when we are tense, it really is usually a good majority of the time an indicator that we are more disconnected from our true self, and relaxation is really our connection to truth.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for this enlightening speech.
Thank you.
But I just wanted to refer back to your hose of, like the soul's purpose or the free flow to our true self, and the kink being our conditioned self.
Yep.
So when we feel that discomfort between the pull of our true self and the conditioning, and you said meditation would be the way to realign to our to get back or to release the kink in the hose, right?
Yep.
Once we sit in that meditation and we're able to do the inquiry thing that you mentioned before, would that be the ego or the mind making decisions to release the kink? Or how do we sit in that discomfort and know what we choose?
Yes. Well, we don't have to necessarily release the kink. When we're choosing peace, we're choosing to align to our true self. So whatever choice you make that is along the more peaceful path, that's automatically the kink is going to be less kinked. It doesn't mean it's going to be completely unkinked. It just depends on where we're at that given moment. In terms of choice, that's really going back to what feels true to us. So even me, that I said to you that my whole journey, I was sort of searching. And everywhere I went, I actually found answers. So my true self was still guiding me, even through my ego. So it was always in there. And I just discovered it already. We can't help but be pulled in that direction. It will automatically pull us, even when we're lost in our conditioned mind either way. It's just, this is more of like a shortcut to that rather than you will eventually go in that direction.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. There's one more person over there. And then I think it might be time. Yeah. All right. You just got one more question, and yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for your talk, Patrick.
Thank you.
So I have a question about being aligned with your true self.
Yeah.
You know how you mentioned, I guess generally when you're in alignment, things feel good. I don't know if that's the word you use exactly, but you're more at peace. Mm-hmm. But then you mentioned how that's not always the case. And there's certain instances where you're not necessarily misaligned, but like you need to go through that or you're meant to be there. How do you distinguish when like you're misaligned or it doesn't feel good, but you're in a place which is not meant to feel good? Like that's probably not articulated the best way, but I don't know if you get the gist.
Yeah, so maybe like an example might be that it feels right to quit smoking, but it doesn't feel good to quit smoking. So it might feel like a lot of withdrawals and cause pain while I'm doing it.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes it only feels painful, usually because of the beliefs that we learnt. So while our true self might really want us to, say, just use this as example, me to speak and share my story and share my knowledge. So that feels true to me. That doesn't necessarily always feel pleasant to me, though. So it's me recognizing, but I'm okay not to feel pleasant because my mind was one that always learned to worry about what other people think. So that's why it's still got a little tinge of that in there. But the more I recognize that my opinion of myself is most important. So it's my opportunity to recognize and align my thoughts with my true self, which is what I think about myself, how I love myself, not what I was taught to think about myself. Yeah.
Okay.
Hope that answers, yeah. Thank you. So thank you everyone for coming to my talk. Much appreciated. I'm just behind this curtain. If anyone wants to come and chat to me, I'm here all weekend. And like I said, I've got a book as well if anyone's interested in understanding this deeper. Thank you all.